Namaste, everyone. Welcome to today's guest talk. The title today Is Social Media Really Social? The speaker is Ms. Aditi Kaul. We all know her very well by now. She is a very important part of the YES project. I will share a brief formal introduction for her. Aditi Kaul is a seeker working towards bringing the perennial wisdom of self-knowledge to the field of psychology and developing ways that can facilitate an integral approach towards life. Conscious living is a full-time job, is her living aspiration. Currently, she teaches integral yoga psychology at university level and also conducts online sessions focused on dialogue-based inquiry and self-exploration. Welcome, Aditi. Thank you for being with us today. Looking forward to an interesting session with you. Over to you.
Thank you, Arunima. Namaste, everyone. And welcome to talk about social media on social media. And it will be shared also later on social media. So I'm definitely not bashing social media so much, but trying to bring in a perspective which in our experience we know, but it's sometimes good to go through it and make some sort of alterations in our life so that we can become more and more aware of whatever we are engaging with in life. Because all of us are on a journey and there are different things which help us evolve. And social media today has become a very, very important part of everyone's life. I mean, it's really like it's in the atmosphere that we live, eat, breathe social media. It has become such a integral part, not the integral yoga perspective which we understand, but an integral part of our everyday living. So if we really talk about like the title which I came up with, like, is social media really social? Essentially, I wanted to explore the idea that have we really forgotten what it was when we really started talking about socializing? And as humans, how we have evolved, one thing which has been very, very constant with all of us is that secret sense of seeking and aspiration, that human aspiration to grow, to evolve, to progress. And this is not just like a mental aspiration, but it is also like an evolutionary impulse which human beings have been blessed with, in a sense that we want to go from place, say, point A to point B. It's just that the methods which we choose determine the quality of our journey. And social media has just become one of the methods to take us from, say, point A to point B. But in that process of how, if you look at in the last few years or maybe decades now, in that sense of how this interaction has evolved, it initially started with just giving people a platform to voice themselves. It was really how, because we were not connected so much, there was like telephones were coming up, then we got those mobiles, we knew that we were still staying with the idea that, oh, if I want to reach somebody, I can just call them and reach out. I don't have to like physically go and meet the person. And it was not just for, say, saying chit chatting, but also in case of emergencies. So any form of technology develops which helps people to make their lives better. But just because of the kind of human beings we are at present, like how Shrabinder says that man is a transitional being, every time something new comes, it is beyond a point then captured by the lower forces, and it becomes a sense of hurdle to us, which was essentially brought to build our life and make our life much easier. And this is where our actual participation comes in, because human beings at this level of evolution are conscious beings. We are not anymore just driven by our basic impulses, though most of us, most of the time, are driven by our basic impulses, but we also have a choice to make. So it's like every moment when we're engaging, it can be like, are we a conscious collaborator or are we an unconscious slave to whatever method is given to me for communication? In this case, we are talking about social media. So how more and more can I consciously collaborate with it? And for conscious collaboration, the first and fundamental step is to become conscious of who I am. I can only bring myself. It's like we keep talking about collective, but what you bring to the collective is the individual. So you, as more and more you become aware of who you are in your essence and not just the surface explanation of who you are or how you look or what you think, which of course is a very, very important part of your personality, but who you truly are. So the more you become more and more closer to your essence, to your deeper identity, the more richness you bring to the collective. So the social perspective which expresses itself expresses your individuality. And that is how you enrich society at large, that you're bringing what is unique to you and helping people progress as a whole. But now, if we look at today, what is happening is we are also deriving our individuality from the social media platforms. And that is the most dangerous error which we are gripped with at this point of time. And especially, we are very concerned about, say, the younger generation today that, oh, they're all the time on the social media. But it is not just the younger generation. We can talk about them because, yes, they are the future. But if you also look at people of any age right now, because social media has kind of hooked human beings, irrespective of the age, because what they are addressing is that innate need, which is who am I? So instead of going inside of who am I, today the media is giving us ample options who you can be. So that idea of who you can be gives us an illusion of who I am. And that's a constant struggle which happens between that interaction. And in that, we are just passing our time and we're becoming better also. So it's not that we are not growing, but we can just pause and reflect for our own selves in our own social media journey, that how much am I being influenced by the world? How much am I influencing the world? And what is like the combination of the two? And what is feeding into what and how? And the more we get like our own proportion, the more we see that it is like deciding the dosage. So a doctor gives the medication to every patient, but the dosage depends upon the severity of your condition. So we all have that need to be part of the world, to be like part of the society, part of a culture, part of a group. Yet we also want to be unique. We want to stand out. We want people to know who we are. So this is like that duality on which this social media perspective has really just captured, that it keeps giving you that, oh, you are choosing, you are choosing, you are choosing. But what you're choosing from is the limited option given to you by who is wanting you to choose a certain thing. So that kind of complexity, that kind of loop which we get into, that is what has really made it nothing but an illusion of individualization. And that is what needs our attention, that it is not anymore, say, social media, it is more of like personal media. Because in that garb of sense of individualization, what we are doing is we are bringing more and more of our personal life out on the platform. So it is not so much about what I'm living and what I'm thinking and kind of like what needs to be shared. So it's like the filtration. So the filters have taken so much space on the platform that before getting on the platform, we have completely missed the filters. That this about my life needs to be put out. This is personal to me. This is not personal to me. This is what I want to share with my friends. This is what I want to share with people at large. All those filtrations have gone because it because of the very fundamental reason that the ease of access and the constant reward and validation which it gives us. I share, I get recognized. I share, I get recognized. And that sometimes in that process, we don't even realize that when have we crossed the line. So something which, if we look at really how the platforms have evolved, starting with just giving us like a trailer that, oh, this is how you can interact. So when there were not so much of smartphones and there was not internet was not so easily accessible, all these media sites were still there. So we had to actually open our laptops or our computers. Then we have to go to the website. then actually log into the account, then see, oh, who has say messaged me or who has wished me or whatever. So there was multiple steps in between which I had to take if I wanted to access or if I wanted to engage with the world. But now with apps coming up and usage of more and more phones, all the steps, the mediums have just gone. So it's on like really on my fingertips that I can access the world. So what in a traditional scriptural understanding we say that, oh, the world is one, we have to have that sense of oneness. So the principle remains the same, that oh, we are all connected. But the way we have connected is something which we need to reflect. Because if we really look from a broader perspective, something like in between is happening. So the life is happening in between. Most of the time it is captured by the lower forces. So we go down and we get into that push and pull of the forces which are really, really entangling us. Or we can move towards the higher forces, which gives us a sense of expression, which gives us a sense of expansion, and which helps us to see the wider perspective. So the same goes with any form of media consumption or media expression. That if we look at, say, the framework of, say, personality, which the integral yoga gives us, that we have a surface personality which has a mental domain to it, a vital domain to it, a physical domain to it. Now, just in your own experience while I speak, you see that every time you engage with social media, what part of you is captured by the information which is given to on the screen. So if you're more of a exploratory person in sense of a person of ideas, your scrolling will be more about what is happening where, why is it happening, your whys are answered again and again, again and again. If you're more of a vital person, the kind of information that is given to you just by the nature of how you are feeding into. So the system is like what you feed into, it feeds you back and it gives you a feeling, oh, they understand me well. But they are not understanding you well, they're limiting you in a way that you give a sense of, oh, wow, they know me. So they don't know you, they are limiting you so that you are a perfect market for them. So it is also like how media is not anymore, say we were talking about connections. So it has moved from being a space for connection to being a space for making us consumers. So it has gone from that connection to that consumerism, and we have not become nothing but just products. So it is not any space for, oh, I want to voice out. What I'm voicing out, what I'm sharing with the world is being tracked, and then I've been given information about products, about places which align with what ideologies I am conforming to. So which also gives me an idea that, oh, see what I think, the world also thinks like this, which means that I'm right. So it also boxes us in a way that what I am thinking is what is aligned to the world. So that is again an error which we have to become very, very mindful of. And when I talk about, say, the framework, so vital, we all understand that has the tendency of, really holding on, really capturing, really like just creating that hook because it really looks for that satisfaction that I exist, I want that fulfillment, I want that fulfillment. So anytime I am consuming any kind of content, the contact which I'm making with it is really giving my vital that immediate satisfaction that, oh, I'm being fed. But it is that feeding of that how we have that fast food which immediately like instant hunger it goes, but immediately then you feel hungry again. But if you have really having that proper food, you're full for a long time. But social media is like that fast food for us, that immediately we feel satisfied, but then in few moments we again want more. And that is how that cycle of addiction gets created, that it is also giving me a sense of fulfillment at one level, and it is also giving me a sense of hunger for more at the same level. So that paradoxical nature of our relation with the information keeps us completely addicted to what we are going, because and also because now it is that the information doesn't end. So if I log into any media, it will not say end. Even on Instagram, if you experience, you see that end for you today, but then you also see other posts. So it's like, okay, they're giving you a slight signal that I think you are done, but it's your call. So you also feel that sense of power. So it is really like how parents in childhood gives you that illusion, no, that okay, beta, we are doing what you want, but essentially they have only laid out a plan for us, and we are thinking as little kids that, oh, see, they understand, they are letting me play. But there's a larger framework which they've already devised, which they're not telling us. So these big giants are like that. Of course, There's no question of the intentions in either cases. But the idea here is that we have become more and more attached to this idea because it gives us immediate satisfaction. And then, of course, we have those numerous studies that, oh, physiologically it does this, psychologically it does that. All of these information also is given to us through social media in a way that they're saying, oh, you can change your relationship. But see, this also helps you. This is a place where you get more information. So that kind of cycle is very, very interesting, which gives us a space to, yes, I can share, but my expression has to have some sort of experience. So constant expression kinds of detaches us from our inner experience. So it's like, okay, I'm going here, I click, I post, I click, I post. So where am I actually sitting and really taking in? It's like first we used to click pictures through our mind, and they used to really go inside of us and stayed and did something to us. It really played an important role in our journey. Now we are clicking pictures from an instrument. So our experience is outside, our expression is outside, the validation is outside, everything is happening outside, and we are getting more and more distant from like the world. So it looks like that we are connecting to the world, but our expressions are more and more leading to disconnect from the world. And because this is happening so much at a subtle level, that we wonder that there's so many people around us, there's so many people literally on our fingertips where we can text, we can check, but still I'm feeling all alone. And especially this happens in youngsters because when they check their social media, they're like, oh, I have so many friends. But then when they're really wanting to talk to, they're like, oh, if I talk to this person, what if this person tells this person? Or what if they post about it? Or what if this goes online? So a lot of that, we don't feel secure enough to be who we are. So earlier when we talked about socializing, it was like I'm living a full individual life. I have a life, I have a family, I go to work, I have friends, and then occasionally we sit together and we share our life. So it was living life and then sharing life. Now what has happened is living on the social media, and then when you're off the social media, you're sharing about social media. So the equation has kind of got reversed. So even if you look at the kind of vocabulary we have taken to, and for example, if I'm not engaging with any kind of content, we are talking about content. So either we are consuming content or we are talking about content. So it is always occupied a mind space. And when we give our mind so much of information about certain things, beyond a point, our mind starts thinking that, yes, if I'm reading about it, that means I also have it. So more and more, the knowledge practice gap is increasing. And especially if we talk about from the yogic perspective, we understand that even if we know a little, till the time we don't practice it, it will not bring in the desired change we are talking about. So if I'm say talking about so much about say all these motivational speeches on the net or different places people go. So one level, what the media has opened is the possibility. But because we are not working on ourselves enough to be conscious beings, we are getting too pulled by the possibilities and not so much about the actions which we require to do. So it's a like how I keep talking about the conscious change, that what do I need to choose? How do I need to choose? And what do I need to reject? And am I okay being rejecting the certain things? So rejecting a certain aspect is not equal to being rejected by the world. So, and I will only have that feeling that I'm not being rejected by the world, but when I have a deeper acceptance from a higher source. So, the more I connect within, the more my expression will be free from expectation. And when my expression is free from expectation, I can contribute more and more. And that is how there will be a certain sense of personality, which is then being shared rather than personality being shaped by the content. So sharing and being shaped will have distance, and in that distance, we will grow. So it is not entirely rejecting the idea because we understand the kind of changes at a positive level also being connected at a larger group helps. So now I know that we are not so restricted to, say, the place we live in, or the city we live in, or the country we live in. We can have access to, say, especially in terms of education. I know that online a lot of educational material is available, which all of us can access anytime. We know that the kind of accounts I follow, or the kind of pages I follow, or the kind of people I follow, I can know a lot more. So the possibilities are endless. But what in me is wanting to interact with those possibilities, that is what we need to know. That if I am a person who's looking for expansion but still rooted, then I will choose. But if I'm a person who doesn't know what to do and then I enter the space of, say, social media, then I'm swayed by so many options that then I don't know. So being rooted, being established will give me a sense of really bringing a sense of, say, being personally social or being socially personal. When I'm really empty, when I'm really, I don't have anything. So my personal life is equal to my social life. Like everything I'm doing, I'm like really putting out there, because I don't know if I switch off the camera, who am I? But if I'm really living a content life, then I'm happy to share. Like how in teaching space, education space, we say, you know, the teachers are constantly learning. And it's also that what you live, you share. But if you're sharing is your living, then it's a different space. So that kind of demarcation becomes very, very essential. And especially what is important is like how we spoke about, we have become like from that connection to consumerism. Another thing which is very, very important is that the nature of content. Like earlier, the nature of content was really something which was maybe required for you, which was more aligning with your journey. But now, just because we just have to put out something there, the nature of content is not as refined as it would contribute to your journey. Like if you just look around, like the kind of data you consume, the kind of headlines newspapers give online, like the newspaper channels, the kind of images they use, it is just that there is no filtration. It is completely catering to those lower forces in you, which are really like hooked, because you can only hook the lower because higher has that sense of discernment. So till the time we don't have that discernment developed enough, everything which is given to us, we believe it. And that is why we are more concerned about how younger generation is perceiving social media, because there's no filtration in the content consumption. So how do we really apply that and kind of create that balance between online and offline? And these things, when we talk about, it's like, oh, everybody knows it. There's nothing new which you're talking about. And all of us in our head know it, in our heart know it. So is it not the right time for us to ask the right questions and start refining our engagement? So the immediate thing which mind gives us, or the vital strike, like when the vital goes on a strike and it's like, okay, you're talking about it in such good, like bad things, now I'll not engage with it. So the rejection comes in. So when the place is for refinement, we kind of gravitate towards rejection, which in a way works in a way that no, I need it. Say I want to talk to this person, I not to talk to that person. So no, it is not that bad. Next time I will start engaging properly. So we miss the intermediate steps and immediately jump on to either say accepting it wholeheartedly, which kinds of gives us a license to engage unconsciously, or completely reject and devoid ourselves and say that no, it's bad. But inside that thing is not purified enough so that it can completely let go. So somewhere in between the idea of, say, when we talk about the knowledge practice gap, or we talk about operating in ignorance versus operating in knowledge, all these things have to come together when we are really focusing so much on building an individuality, which is to be offered on the social platform. And in building that individuality, of course, social media has a role, because if I need some information, if I need something which helps me grow, I know. So it is like the keywords should emerge from within and the information can come from outside. But right now, the loop which we are getting into is even the keywords are feeded to us from the outside. So beyond a point, I don't even know what I'm looking for. So creating that gap that, okay, what is it in my journey that I want? Okay, where can I find it? So the social platforms become a space to get information, which then aligns with my seeking and becomes knowledge for my progress. So this journey, when comes together, helps us explore more and more and caters to our progressive impulse. So like we started with talking about how all of us have that impulse to grow, an impulse to just progress. We want that sense of movement, and that scrolling gives us a sense of movement. So even if I'm sitting here, if I have that phone in my hand and I'm just doing like this, with like my thumb plays such an important role now because it helps us reach the world. So if I'm scrolling, it is like, oh, I'm moving because my thoughts are moving. But when my thoughts are moving beyond a point, they're just unconsciously getting entangled more and more. So they are not catering to anything in me. So one thing which is interesting for especially people who are more aware, who are like wanting to walk the path of self progress, is to start with observing like what is my pattern. And before actually correcting my pattern, which again is a lot of effort, can I start using the same pattern to become more and more aware? So it's like we all know that we operate at multiple levels. So my first level is surface engagement, which I'm mindlessly engaging with the world. But I also have a second level, which is aware of my being mindlessly engaged with the world. So then when I become aware of the second layer, I try station myself more and more there. So I will not be able to, like, now maybe I'm just talking about myself, maybe you are able to, but I may not be able to immediately stop that mindless scrolling. But what I can do is take the second step and become aware that, oh, I'm doing it. And it can be stopped and without judgment. So becoming aware of that will immediately create that distance. And then I can at least do something about it. Because without creating distance, if I judge it, it goes to like the lower. But with distance, without judgment, it can help me aid my progress to move maybe away from it or maybe use it in a better manner. So that is one level. And then when I become aware, I have that sense of power which is truly coming from inside. So it is not the power which is coming from the outside that, oh, I have a power to choose what to follow and what not to follow. But I have a power to choose when to follow and when not to follow. So the element of time comes in. And the moment element of time comes in and it brings together the element of power, that is when discernment gets very, very concrete. So then I can choose when to do and when not to do, when to engage, when not to engage, how to engage. So slowly reclaiming the power with continuous usage. So that is how I'm building my individuality. And then when I'm offering things to the world, I'm really offering that individuality to the social platform. So that how it really, really becomes that conscious collaboration. Like how we talk about that if we are really wanting to walk the path of evolution, we have to become conscious collaborators of nature. So conscious collaborators of nature, not like at the higher level, yes, that is the aim. But how to even start small, to start with what is really given to us. So that is that level. And then becoming aware that when does my need changes into the want. So I may need social connection. I may need because that is a human need to interact with people. Like I like looking at whatever two, three people I'm looking at screen, like, oh, you're listening to me. But when that need becomes a want that no, every day I want 10 people to acknowledge my existence. So when that will become my want is when I will constantly hear that, oh, this is important, you need it, you need it. So every day, if I'm really consuming an information which tells me that, oh, 10 people need to validate you every day, then soon that information becomes a belief for me. And then I start working towards it. So to create that gap, that is the social content really giving or creating a belief system for me which has a motive which has nothing to do with me, but a very commercial or a consumer oriented motive. So, am I becoming aware of that motive? And of course, I'm also learning a lot more things. But when is my learning becoming repetitive? When am I really giving my mind that message that no, 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 I'm just learning. So where is my sincerity in that process of repetition? So that is also something which we really, really want to bring to our attention. That is that space which initially brought out in the sense that it is a place where people can come, engage, interact, to a space where it has just become people to just say showcase who they are, and not who they are in their essence, but who they can be. So that connection has also become somewhere not just consumerism from, say, the marketing perspective, but also a very competitive place, which has become a threat to individuality. That the person is going there, that person is buying this. So it is altering everything, what we feel, what we see, what we think, everything is being altered by something which is just being created. So, how do we first create a gap with just maintaining that distance, and that in that gap express more and more who we are becoming, so that that gap is bridged by not, say, the information which is given from the world, but the experience which is coming from the inside of us. So the bridging between the social and the individual becomes the individual experience and not the social information overload. So that gap of, say, knowledge and ignorance can be bridged by the knowledge which is coming from within, and that can counter the ignorance which is prevailing in the world. So that knowledge ignorance bridging is something which can really make that space actually a space for communication. You will actually have something to say, something to contribute to. It will be a very meaningful contribution, a space which is not just on the outside, which looks like oneness, but inside we are just in that comparative mode. Oh, this person is doing that, that person is doing that, but genuinely oneness. So creating that sense of community can come with the surety within. So all these spaces that come will come when the social media addresses the functionality of our existence, which is like the outer personality, but that is also aligned to who we are in the essence, which is the composition of us. So the more our functionality and composition gets connected, the more our functionality in the world will become more and more conscious. And the more our functionality in the world will become conscious, the social media prompts will not reach us in a way that can influence us mindlessly, but we can choose. So it will really, like, if you really want to summarize what we have been talking about, it is like eating food is a necessity, but you can decide your diet. So you can't completely negate that, oh, I don't want to go out and eat. Maybe you can say that if you're 24/7 ordering Zomato, or maybe once a week you're ordering or you're cooking. So the power lies with you. How do you devise your diet plan? Because you need to eat, that is the world you're living in. So making a conscious choice of a healthy diet will help us resolve all the negativities which the social structure of this content is creating, because it just makes like this, no, that we keep talking about technology, or we keep talking about media, that is work, like moving towards destruction. It is moving towards destruction because we are not consciously collaborating with its existence, because we are not working on ourselves enough to collaborate consciously. So the bottom line is that the more we consciously collaborate, the more we can use it for collective evolution. And that is when it can, anything, like right now we're talking about social media, the social media perspective can serve its purpose well when people who are using it are becoming more conscious beings, and they know how to use it, and they see things in totality. So people don't talk about it just positively or negatively, but holistically. So that is when it will really give us that, when I'm connecting, what is my intention to be connected? What is my aspiration? Why am I being connected? What is my contribution? So the more and more I am clear about my intention, my contribution, my experience, the more I can collaborate with people online. So to become more and more sure of who we are, we can offer to the world who we become. So I think that is where I think I can stop. And if we have any more questions or discussions, we can just talk about our own struggles or questions or anything which you intend to. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Aditi. I really like the very interesting observations that you shared and the interpretations. They were wonderful. And one thing that you mentioned that rather than sharing what we are, who I am, people are getting inputs for them. Like you said that people, the inputs that they are getting is who you can be. So one thing that relates to that fact is that even the popular personalities on maybe Instagram, on Facebook, we call them social media influencers. So that's how they are influencing the public. So thank you so much. Participants, if anyone has a question or any inputs to share, please go ahead. You can put the questions in the chat box or you can raise the hand and unmute yourself.
Yeah, in fact, meanwhile, if people are thinking about the questions, when you mention influencers, it is also something which I keep talking about to especially youngsters, that what in you is getting influenced. And if you just ask this one simple question to your own self, what in you is getting influenced, you know that which part of your being in that sense is getting more and more active in the world, which means that that is undernourished. So then it becomes your responsibility to nourish it well
Mhm.
and to get it, like I keep giving the food example somehow today, but just getting it the right food so that it doesn't go in that direction. So it's not immediately, oh, I don't want to be influencer, oh, I don't want to follow that influencer. Okay, follow that influencer, whoever you're following. But just be aware that why are you following? You're following because your friend is following, or you're following because you really like the body of work that person is putting out there. So if I'm following an influencer who is, say, a travel blogger, for example, maybe because I'm a person who likes to travel, so I also like seeing new places. But if I'm somebody who's not into travel, but because I want to fit into a social structure, I will follow that. But it doesn't nourish me. So social media consumption, what nourishes you, that is what also then helps you grow. So yeah, if I just when you mentioned influencer, that is a very important discussion which we usually have, that because usually, see, I didn't touch upon that, but essentially it's a number game. It's a number game at a social level, it's a number game at an individual level. So why do people now have so much of like blurred boundaries between their personal and social life, which I just touched upon? Because there's so much in that run of more people should follow me, more people should follow me, that they forget that what in you they're following. Like just seeing you eat, drink, and talk to people, what is it adding to your life? So if I want people to follow me, what am I offering in return? So at what part or at what level of awareness I'm operating at? So that is also very, very important to explore in a way. Yes.
Dr. Bijlani, sir, would you like to share your views? Please?
Let me admit, for once, I'm speechless because it was a very balanced, at the same time, clear presentation. And as Aditi said right in the beginning, that she's not going to go about bashing the social media because we are all using it. The fact that there's no getting away from social media is a fact that we have to live with. And the positive impact of social media has also been by no means negligible. And And therefore, what we should be thinking about more is how we use the social media. And if the social media have had a negative impact, it's because we have not used them consciously. So again, it comes back to the consumer. If we are not discreet in our consumption, say she gave the example of food because naturally that is something we can very easily relate to. If we are not discreet in choosing what we eat, we can't blame the superstore for it, why they displayed all the food there. Because it ultimately depends upon us. If we choose only what is healthy for us, the unhealthy food will rot there and they'll stop stocking it. So it again comes back to us. And all I can do, as I very often do when I'm speechless, is to share a few gems that were there and were worth recapitulating. Uh, Firstly, I mean, the media create in us an illusion of who I am. And therefore, instead of paying enough attention to this perennial and very important question, which is the source of the discovery not only of the true self, but also of our relationship with the others and discovering a basic oneness. And if instead of that, we get a quick and easy answer through social media, which defines us in a certain way, it only creates an illusion that now I know who I am. But all the identities that are being created for me uh, merely overwhelm me and help in dismissing that important question as if it has been answered. But actually, it has not really been answered. Then, she talked about what happens is that the nature of the content is such that it tends to, because it's a number game. So the number game is not there only in elections. Now we are having an election all the time and everybody is participating in some sort of an election or the other. So since it's a number game, there's a tendency to cater to the lower in us rather than to the higher in us, because the lower is what gets very easily hooked. The higher is more discreet, and that's why naturally, if anyone is trying to sell something, they'll cater to what is likely to hook more people, so that they win in that number game. Whereas in spirituality, it's just the opposite. And only today I was reading one of the letters of Sri Aurobindo, in which some disciple seems to have asked him a question as to which of the methods, which of the paths. Perhaps the question was about using different techniques and different paths, such as work and meditation and the devotion and uh, all the other sort of uh, uh, techniques and aids that we use on the spiritual path. Which one uh, of I mean, out of all these, which one is the best? By following which one can get to the goal the fastest. And Sri Aurobindo starts with a very clear answer and an emphatic answer that the spiritual path is not about competition. It's not about running a race. And therefore, to each his own. And you do what suits you the best and don't worry about what others are doing. The divine will guide each one of us on the path that is meant for us or that is best for us. So instead of that, what is happening in the social media is that we are losing that sense of discretion. So there is a certain amount of individualism and individuality in carving out our own path, which we need on the spiritual path, particularly the path of integral yoga. That is important. And that is what is getting lost in the social media, because we end up doing many things because everybody else is doing it. Who we are, that gets defined by others, and the whole in the process uh, we become products, we become a part of the market which the social media are looking for. So the fact that we become that is happening because we are not using our sense of discretion properly. We are not conscious about how we engage. The fact that we have to engage with social media is inevitable today, but how we engage is always our own choice, and that is what we have to be conscious of. And if we do that consciously, the social media can not only not do us harm, they can do us a lot of good, which was also pointed out, as has happened in the field of education. It has become so easily accessible. The best of teachers in the world can easily come in contact with the students uh, at virtually no cost. And therefore, knowledge has become free and freely available to each one of us. And that is one of the biggest gains that we have. And within that, to use one's discretion is also not difficult because as Sri Aurobindo again has said somewhere that the joint verdict of time and the world is seldom wrong. So if we are looking for something uh, to learn more, there may be millions of places where it is available on the net. But then the net itself has its own way of sorting it out. And the entries at the top are likely to be those which have passed through both these tests to some extent. The joint verdict of the world and time, which means that a much larger number of people in the world has liked that, and it has stood the test of time. It has been there for the last several years. So this joint verdict is seldom wrong, and therefore we can get the best even from the net in the area that we are looking for, if we are conscious of it. But then what we are looking for is also important, because if we start looking for trash, we may end up with trash which has stood the test of time. So that discretion, of course, still rests with us. But what to look for, having decided that, then in spite of the content on the net being very mixed in quality and character, we can always get at the best by using the simple formula of the going by the joint verdict of time and the world. So these were some of the thoughts that occurred to me. And in the meantime, maybe the other participants have something to say, or Aditi herself has something more to share.
Yeah, I mean, one thing which like we didn't elaborate more is in a way it covers also that search for identity when we were talking about who am I. Like if you ask the question, what hooks you, it is also that what part of your identity or what part of your existence is something which you relate to. So a lot of youngsters, why we talk about social media in context to them is that the identity formation is often borrowed. So if the identity formation is borrowed, then it's a risky thing because there's no stability. So if we can also become more and more aware of our need to express and are also our need to experience and somehow balance it. And just one more point I wanted to make that a lot of our focus is on social media in terms of where the younger generation is consuming it and going. But I also look around and see that so many of middle-aged people, like people of say our parents' generation, how they have taken social media as their identity. And I also see that maybe when they were growing up or when they were engaging, socializing, it was very different and it was very moralistic society, so to speak. So they were not so much maybe allowed, or they may be not knowing what are the avenues of expression. So now when this freehand information and freehand space has come, so I see a lot of people of that generation just getting hooked to social media so much and just commenting on every post, commenting, voicing their opinions. And in a way, it feels like a universal or collective catharsis, but in a way, it also needs some sort of refinement. So, like, my suggestion to myself and also to people in general is not to focus so much on, oh, where the younger generation is going, but also kind of seeing that what the, say, the middle-aged generation is doing with social media and how much is it. I mean, there's no judgment of good or bad, but like we keep talking about balance, we keep talking about moderation, but just the like how in the light of wanting to say be at par with the younger generation or with like say some sort of, I call it vital cleaning. So because I had so much of unrefined emotions, expressions inside me, this just becomes that refinement process. So how all of these things just come together. So it has nothing to do with age, it has nothing to do with qualification, it is just human to human. So the more humans refine, the more humans progress. So if we can just look at that lens, it gives us a very broader perspective and not so much about, oh, where we are going, but just, yeah, just a wider thing. And somehow just I thought I'll touch upon this also because it also somehow runs in my head when I just observe. So yeah, I think now I will stop. So if anybody has any questions, or maybe then Arunima can close because it can just become random explorations then. Thank you, everyone.
No, I extracted something from what you said just now, and it's worth repeating. And that is, a combination of moderation and discretion. Moderation is good, it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. For example, in case of again food, one may say that, well, I may take unhealthy food, but I'll take it in moderation. That's not enough. So moderation has to be combined with discretion. So, and that applies also to the social media.
Thank
I
you,
have
sir.
with me Indrani here. Maybe she has something to say. I want to say something.
Aditi, you have explained very nicely and you have covered it because I was thinking that what kind of solution you will give, but you have ended up in a very nice solution that it depends upon you and ourselves that how we should work on the social media. Because yes, social media gives us knowledge. Like when we were a small kid, the TV was introduced to us. So now there are a lot of channels, thousands of channels in the TV. Earlier it was only one or two channel we used to, that is also divided, like some spiritual or some programs were there, some serials were coming up that also give you lessons in your life. But now, since we do have thousands of channels surrounded with us, and in YouTube also a lot of videos are also coming with us. So it is upon us only that how we should look into it. So you have yes, why I can understand how Bijlani Bhaiya is speechless, because you have covered it so nicely, very nicely. You have completed it. So you have completed the whole loop, that how we should work, what we should do, and how we should cover it in our life. Thank you, Aditi, for sharing your thoughts. It was very nice.
Yes, Dr. Sangeeta, please go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Aditi, for a lovely presentation. I just want to say one thing here related to truth. I'm sorry, but I don't agree that you get a lot of real, true facts, even via Google or social media. Or Wikipedia, they have been filtered through people's own researches and filtered through people's own understandings and conditioned minds. So I think we have to be very careful, because I've come across this so many times in my researches. Is like, oh, ask Uncle Google. And Uncle Google is not right. I'm sorry, it's not the be all and the end all of the truth or what actually happened. It's also been fabricated to a certain extent as a sort of propaganda as well, to get people to believe in certain directions that whoever wants us to believe in. And I think we have to bear that in mind. I think it's really important, because we've got this whole thing going on now of like, oh, just depending on Google. Google will tell us what the facts are. That's not true. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just to address what you just shared, that yes, like if we are really talking about truth, so even if we go by mother's word, she has very particularly said that truth cannot be known, it can only be experienced. So if at that level, yes, we are all aspiring to live to that context. But when we're talking about the factual information, it is more about just catering to our own functionality, that, okay, if I may use Google Map, which is also not 100% true, it can lead you somewhere else, like it's end of the road, where do I go? So again, that sense when you're talking about that moderation and discretion comes in to more and more intensify our inner journey and purify more and more, so that we rely less on Google, but more on the divine. So if that is what our orientation becomes, then that's our journey. So that is, I think, the collective aspiration with which we can maybe just close with a moment of silence, to have that collective aspiration of asking the divine and not asking the Google, so that we can be closer in our discovery of truth. So yeah. Thank you. Yes, Arunima, you can just close. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditi. I thank the participants for being with us today. We close today's session with a moment of peaceful silence.